Alrighty, welcome everyone. We're just letting people sign in and then we'll get started in just a second. This is the part of Zoom where I wish they had kind of built-in Jeopardy music. Just
That's something to you during this time.
yes, exactly. Alrighty, so thank you everyone for coming out tonight virtually. I'm Gracie, I'm the events coordinator for print. Just a few housekeeping details before we start. If you have any questions during the event, please feel free to enter them either in the chat box on the bottom right or in the question and answer feature, which is on the bottom bar of your screen. If you'd like a copy of Survival Instincts, I can include the link to the print page in our chat box. You can click right through. I'd quickly like to thank Maine Writers and Publishers Alliance and Gibson for their partnership on this event. They are and have always been an invaluable organization for the promotion of literature in Maine, especially for us during this crazy pandemic time. And we've been so fortunate to work with them on a number of events. So thank you. And now for our speakers. Mira Ptacin is the award-winning author of the acclaimed genre-bending book of history memoir, The In-Betweens, as well as the award-winning memoir, Pour Your Soul. Jen Waite is the author of the international bestseller, A Beautiful Terrible Thing, and now Survival Instincts. She lives in Maine with her daughter. Please join me in virtually welcoming Mira and Jen.
Hi. All right, so I guess I talk now, or I'll read my little passage. Hi everyone. So I actually haven't done one of these virtual things yet, so I didn't know if I'd be able to see everyone, but I can't see anyone. I can see nothing. So you can see me. Here's the book. I won't read like this the whole time. I'm gonna read a passage from page 75, just a quick, like, one-page passage. I was telling Mira before that I read from this book at a work event a long time ago, and I picked like 5 pages to read, and it was really brutal because it's so much longer than you would think when you're just hearing your own voice and silence. So I'm gonna do 1 page this time. I'll just give you guys a little, it's strange not knowing who's actually on the Zoom, but hi everyone. So I'll give you guys a little context for this scene from Survival Instincts. A mother, Anne, her daughter, her 12-year-old daughter, Thea, and Anne's mom and Thea's grandmother, Rose, are going on a hike in the Waite Mountains of New Hampshire. They've gone for a little girls' getaway. And they go to this nature reserve where it is pristinely beautiful. It's off season, so late February, but it's still freezing cold, and they're kind of just taking in the beauty. There's like a river, whooshing by them. But of course, this is a thriller. So as you might think, there is someone who is following them. And so this scene is kind of right when that all comes together. So this is from Anne's perspective. When Anne first saw the man, she wasn't frightened. He wore a thin gray sweater and dark khaki pants. His hair was thinning on top, but he had a thick beard. Within 30 seconds, the purposeful crunching was right behind them, and then he was passing them with a hi that came out more like an exhale than a word. Anne's hi and Rose's hello chimed together, and they shared a glance. He's in a hurry, Anne remarked. He should really be wearing a jacket, her mother said, and shivered, as if absorbing some of the cold for the man. Let's turn back in a few minutes, Kay? She glanced up to the sky. The sun was starting to set, and she could feel the air turning from 30 degrees laced with sun to just 30 degrees. Okay, let's race to the next tree with green and then turn around. Thea took off without waiting for confirmation. Anne groaned, Jesus Christ, to Rose, before taking off after her daughter. She started slow, testing her arms and legs, letting her body warm up. She dug her boots into the snow, pumping her arms and widening her strides. It felt good to run, faster and faster. Her mouth broke into a smile and she whooped into the air to let Thea know she was close. She watched Thea's gangly arms pumping wildly, her daughter's head bent in determination. "I'm gaining on you," Anne yelled, and she heard Thea's excited scream over the roar of the river. It felt so good to play with her daughter again, and she was so intent on catching up to her that at first she didn't even notice the man. She had almost closed the distance between herself and Thea when, for some reason, her eyes moved beyond Thea. Her first thought was one of confusion. Why is he running too? The man ran in a straight line. His hands formed sharp points, his mouth tightly sealed. And then, oh God, what is he running from? Anne stretched her eyes beyond the man, scanning the path, waiting for an animal to come barreling out of the woods, her breath now coming in ragged spurts. Her eyes darted from the man to Thea, who was still running wildly a few yards ahead, head still bent, completely unaware of the man and whatever danger surrounded them all. It only took a few seconds, maybe even just one more second, for Anne to realize that the man was not running away. He was running toward. It was his eyes. In the seconds before they all collided, she saw that there was no fear in his eyes, only a glint of excitement. And then finally, the last coherent thought that shot through her head, though even while she was thinking it, she knew it didn't make sense. Why is he running at Thea? Because he was, without a doubt, running directly toward her child. That's just the little passage to keep you wanting more of survival instincts.
Oh
out
my
today.
God. I haven't gotten to that point of the book yet, but it's so it's so intense. And I'm gonna go ahead and start with the questions. And you know, these are so genuine, dying to know questions that I would want to ask you over coffee or tea or alcohol. But your first book was a memoir, and it was a memoir that was also somewhat thrilling, or sort of like, you know, it was a thriller memoir in some ways. Yeah. I'll ask the more superficial question first, but how does a person go from writing a memoir to a novel, and what is it like?
First of all, I love that the book is behind you. I just noticed that for the first time. Perfect. So I had very different experiences writing the memoir and then writing the novel. The memoir, A Beautiful, Terrible Thing, I always say this, it sounds cliche, but it felt like it wrote itself, and it felt like it was already in my body and it just kind of came out. And I didn't even really think about it. I didn't outline it. You know, I didn't think about plot or arc or character because it happened in real life. Although with some memoir, you know, you do think about those things. But I wrote that memoir almost while it was happening. So it was kind of a psychological thriller that I was living at the time. And so it just wrote itself in like literally 3 months. But I think that when I started, so I'm a voracious reader, I think, as like a lot of us probably on this call are. And I just think when you read, and especially when you read in a certain genre, which I've always really loved, the thriller genre, that was like in my brain of how to like set up a scene and how to keep dropping these little tidbits of information to keep the reader wanting to know more. And whether it was, you know, like a bit subconsciously, I definitely did that with the memoir. Like every chapter left off on a cliffhanger. Mm-hmm. And so when I put out the memoir and a year went by, I just started thinking, I wrote nonfiction, but it really reads like fiction, and I had been getting that feedback so often from readers. I mean, even a lot of readers would message me and say I thought it was fiction until the very last, like until the acknowledgments, and they couldn't believe it. And I got so many of those messages, so I just thought, I'm gonna try my hand at a novel. I, like I said, I love to read thrillers, so I knew kind of the elements of what I think makes a good thriller, and I knew that I had this publishing house behind me and I had an agent behind me, and I just thought, if I don't at least try, I'll always regret it, because my agent said at the very beginning with my memoir, and it shocked me at the time because I wasn't in that headspace at all. I mean, like, bless her soul, but she said at the very beginning, maybe even during our first phone call, she was like, well, this isn't going to be your only book. This isn't a one-off. This is a career for you. And I, of course, was like, yeah, sign me. That's definitely true. But at the time, I didn't think that at all. I thought that was my thing, whatever, that I was going to write, and that was it. And so I sat down, and for the novel, like I said, it was really different. I outlined the whole thing. It was much more painstaking and much more difficult in a lot of ways, because it wasn't just bleh, like it didn't just like come out. I really had to think on it and plan and plot, and I had to make so many changes. With the memoir, I barely did. I mean, I did do some editing, but there wasn't that much. With the novel, Survival Instincts, it was like I added a whole new narrator from like the beginning to the end of the process, and changed the tense, and changed the and changed the, what am I trying to say, from I to she, the person. Like I went from first person to third person. Like there were so many changes that I had to do for the novel. So that was a very different experience. But I guess to like the root of the question, or the root of the answer, is that I knew I could write a psychological thriller. So I just took that and kind of put it into fiction.
Yeah. And Kate Levy is on here, and when you were talking about your memoir, she said it was like an exorcism. And I totally feel the same way with my memoir. It was like I exorcised the story out of me. I wrote it in the wake of it happening, and you just get it out. So you don't have to, I mean, you just tell the story. So I can't imagine writing a novel. And I was wondering, like, how much plotting did you do? How long did it take you to did you plot it out first, or did you like simultaneously spin the plate of writing it and then plotting as you went along? Did it make you crazy?
I plotted it out all first. At least I thought I did. But then, of course, I had to like rewrite a lot of it and add a lot. But when I first started writing, I thought I had the whole outline down. And I gave myself, I remember, I feel like I'm an A-type personality, and I gave myself a word count to hit every single day. And I remember Googling how many words does Stephen King write in a day, because I was like, I'll just do it. Yeah, I'm like, I'll just do what he does. Like, no big deal. Stephen King,
7,100 billion.
No, but he does write 2,000 words a day, and he said no matter what, like Christmas, if he has the stomach flu, if someone's dying, what, like he literally says no matter what, I write 2,000 words a day. And so I said, well, I'm not Stephen King, and I like have a child, and I have a full-time job, so I'm gonna cut that in half. So I did 1,000 words a day, and in, I would say, 4 months, you have a book. It's not necessarily very good, but you have at least a lot of words that you can then go back and make better. I remember my sister, that was like the best advice that anyone gave me. I'll just like pass it forward. Because I'm sure there's other writers on this call. I was just like complaining to her, like, this is so bad. I can't even believe how bad this is. It's drivel coming out of my fingertips. And I was texting her, and she was like, just keep writing, because you need words to edit at the end of the day.
Yes.
So that was the best advice because it took the pressure off. And I think that's like, that's the whole root of writer's block, right? Is like this pressure of like, like I have to do this like masterful thing
It's
all the
writing
time.
is editing. Writing is editing. You get all the
Yep.
clay, you get that clay on there and it looks like glue, and then you just start sculpting it little by little.
Such a great image.
It's so hard. Well, it reminds me of like, remember that there was a woman who had like was cleaning this very old painting of like Jesus, and she got it wet and then tried to recreate the face, and it ended up like this. And that's what first drafts are supposed to look like. I have another question.
Exactly.
This is so I guess I'm so curious because I just want to know what it's like to write a novel. Both of my books have been nonfiction, so I just have to take what I've been given and then make it into a story. But how did you come up with this basic plot? Because I'm just assuming some of it, having read your memoir, some of it comes from your past. I mean, in a warped way. And so how did you come up with the idea and the topic? Because I couldn't help but just see you and your daughter and your mom. And also, like, how did you choose the names of the characters?
Okay. So, yes, I took a trip to the White Mountains with my mom and my daughter.
For real?
As she was 3 at the time. Vivian was 3 at the time. So definitely I changed some things around.
Oh, wait, I can't hear you. It might be me. Uh-oh.
Does that work?
There we go, yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, because I didn't know that I could be heard without my headphones on. So this is great.
Maybe they weren't working the whole time. You just were wearing headphones.
Because I have all these work meetings and no one can ever hear me without those headphones. So I just didn't dare to do it. All right, so you can hear me. Okay. So I made a really funny joke when the exact moment that I cut out.
Oh man.
I know. I said. So I went to the White Mountains with my mom and Vivian when she was 3, and we got kidnapped. But no, that was the joke part. It's not that good the second time around. So no, but I went to the White Mountains with my mom and my daughter, and we took this nature walk, and it was beautiful, and freezing, but just absolutely gorgeous. I remember looking at my cell phone, and it was like in a movie where you don't believe that no one has cell service, but it actually was, not even like 1 bar. It didn't say anything. It didn't even say extended. It was just like nothing, like there's nothing. And in real life, this guy was the only other person that we saw on the whole walk, and he came up from behind us really fast, just like in the novel. And he was wearing like it was like below freezing, and he was wearing just like this thin sweater, and he was pulling this sled behind him with this tarp over it, which now in hindsight, I'm sure he was, like an extreme camper or something, and was doing something really cool like that. But my mom and I both looked at each other and were just like, hi. And it was just kind of weird, but nothing bad happened. And that planted the seed of, well, what would happen if, he did not have the best intentions, or like, there was no one else there. So anyway, that was the seed of it. And then I had to make a plot, like I had to make it like 400 pages worth. So I added a lot of stuff. And then to answer the question about the like relationships based on my own life, I think like all writers probably write based on what they know and what they've experienced in their own lives. I would say that I took what I had experienced in relationships in the past and just made them like an extreme version of that in some cases. But I definitely have experienced, a very subtle emotional abuse that starts very slowly, and it's like that analogy of like a frog being boiled like little by little. You don't realize what's happening. So I use that with the marriage between Anne and Ethan, and you know, drew from my own relationship, but just so anyone knows who has read the novel or is going to read the novel, nothing like horrible. I'm not going to give any spoilers away, but like to me, nothing that horrible ever happened. So I just took that kind of like what I know about gaslighting and like manipulation and like really like subtle like emotional abuse and kind of took it to like a much more extreme level.
As you're talking about it, I'm just going to pull this over here and say, I'm going to plug this, and I'm being very genuine here. This is the book where I'm like, okay, how much longer till my kids go to bed? How can I hide? Like, everybody leave me alone. I want to read this book. I want to stay up late and read this book. It's delicious.
I think it's really a good distraction. It's a good distraction for like everyone is going through this time period in their own difficult way. And I think it's good to, like we were kind of talking about, just, you know, maybe feeling guilty about reading some, I don't want to call it fluff, but, you know, reading fiction or what, but that's necessary to be able to like take a step back and get away and just enjoy yourself for like an hour.
And there's nothing wrong with it. And I mean, it's like it's a balm for burnout, but it's also, I mean, it's just delicious. It is definitely a page turner, and it's been super fun to read. Question I had, so I received this book in the mail just recently, but also I'm with my kids 24/7 now because everything is closed, and so I'm going little by little, but maybe it's clear for later in the book, but I was looking at your acknowledgments, and you give a shout out to the NICU, to a neurosurgeon, and someone who you spent time with at a shooting range. And can you tell me a little bit about how you did that? What you did, some like boots on the ground research instead of just Googling everything. So can you tell us a little bit? You don't have to talk about them all, or you can tell us about all of them. It's up to you.
Without giving any spoilers, because I don't have to talk about it, I had to know, I feel like to be able to describe something three-dimensionally, especially like shooting, I felt like I had to do it. I was Googling at first. I was trying to just figure everything out I did figure a lot of things out with Googling, but there were so many things in the scenes that I added after my like 3-hour session at the Wyndham indoor shooting range that I would have never gotten from Google, or like, you know, like never had that emotional response to it because I had never shot a gun before. And so that was really important, and I'm so glad that I did it. And then there's a character who suffers from epilepsy, and that was another thing that, as much as I did find a lot of stuff on Google and I watched videos, but having like certain women and men come and actually talk to me about their experience, again, like added this depth, I think, to those scenes that I wouldn't have been able to get from just Googling. So yeah, there was some research that definitely went into it. And I almost feel like that was really helpful for me, because when I think with the shooting, I was like feeling stuck. I was feeling really stuck at that point, and I was just feeling like writer's block. And I went and had that, you know, that 3-hour session with Bill Keith at the shooting range. And then I was totally like rejuvenated and went and wrote, you know. So I think that I was almost like pushing back on those specific things. Like I didn't want to do them. And then as soon as I, you know, had those conversations and like did that research, I felt so much better about going in and really getting those layers into the book. And I hope, like, I am a very I think, cinematic writer. Like, I picture everything in my head before I write it. And so that's really important to me, is being able to see everything that has happened. So to have those real life experiences helped me so much with my writing.
Good for you. You did the work there. I mean, you have to feel it too. You have to feel it. You have to see it. Otherwise, it's going to fall flat in the book. So
I didn't know how like scary it would be, at least for me personally, to shoot a gun. Like, I did not really realize what that would feel like emotionally. And that's something that I couldn't have Googled. I couldn't really have, because it was my personal, reaction to it. So it was really helpful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait to get to that part in the book. It is like, I mean, that is a very powerful, the most powerful, literally, instrument, a gun. So to write about what it feels like, having not felt like, it'd be a little tricky. Okay, I'm gonna ask another. I'm gonna steer us into a different direction. We talked about this a little bit, and I'm also gonna tell people in the audience, if you have some questions, we're gonna take it in the next few minutes to questions from the audience. You're welcome to type them into the chat, and then they'll be sent to me, and I'll ask them on your behalf. Or if you just like to give a shout out to Jen, that's fine as well. So I have a question about your writing process. You mentioned that you told yourself 1,000 words a day, which is super respectful. I'm really impressed by that. How and when do you write, or does it change? And how was it when you were working on the book versus now? Do you have any rituals that help you? And what are some, like, we're out of school. Well, how do you improve your craft? Are there any authors you read, anything you do to help your craft?
With the novel, like with the memoir, I think I already said, it just like came whenever it came. I would like pull over on the side of the road and be like in my notes on my phone. With the novel, it was much more precise, and I am working a 9-to-5, and have a child who at the time was 3 when I was writing the novel. So that's what I say about my like A-type personality being helpful and maybe a hindrance, because once I had it in my head that I had to have the 1,000 words a day, I would beat myself up so much. So don't do that. Writers who are watching, don't do that. Definitely, go easy on yourself. But I had an hour lunch break. I still have an hour lunch break every day of the, 5 days a week during my job. And that was when I would try to, if I could get my 1,000 words during my lunch break, it felt so good, because then I knew I was done. And after I put Vivi to bed, I could just watch TV. I didn't have to feel guilty. If I couldn't get them done, that's when kind of the like A-type comes in, and I would be like, I would have to pull up my laptop, and I would have to do the rest of them. And so that's how I worked for the novel. And I will say though that there were definitely like periods of time where I would feel really blocked, and like text my sister or text my mom or whoever, and just say, this is like such shit, excuse my language, and I hate this scene. I've been writing this scene for like a week and it's going nowhere. And like I would get really wise advice from them, and then I would stop writing for a week and then pick it back up. So there were definitely like periods of time where I wasn't getting the 1,000 words every single day, but in general, I'd say I hit it like 80% of the time. And if you can do that, then you have a book in like 4 months. So, but that being said,
did they give you a deadline?
I didn't have a deadline, because this is just an interesting part, I could think, of the industry, if anyone's curious about like the business side of it. Because Penguin considered this book to be my debut fiction, they considered it it's my debut fiction. Even though I had a nonfiction book, it was in my contract that I would only get an advance for nonfiction based on an outline. For fiction, I had to have the whole manuscript. and turn it in, and then they would make an offer, like a regular debut. So it wasn't like I had an advance already and I was just kind of writing blind, or like writing cold, just hoping, okay, like at the end of it, like anyone does really with their first novel, hoping that you get you get an offer. So now, yay, I do have in my contract that I can write an outline in like 3 chapters, but just if anyone's curious, that is typically, you know, for your first like work of fiction, you have to have the whole manuscript. So in a way it was like I didn't have pressure, but also it was kind of in the back of my head. I'm like, I could be writing all this for nothing. Not that it would really have been for nothing, but I totally they could have said, oh, this is absolute trash. You know, we're not giving you an offer on this. So I'm grateful that it all worked out.
With your memoir, did you write the whole thing first and then? Yeah, same.
I did. Yeah, I did. I have heard for some memoir, I don't know, like for you, did you do the whole thing first?
I wrote the whole thing first, then my agent sent it everywhere.
Yeah, so same with me, because, and I kind of feel like the same with you, your memoir, it's not, to me, it read like fiction, but it didn't read like this, you know, research, you know, of like a topic that you can then sell to a publisher. So so mine was the same. I wrote the whole thing and then cold queried like 75 agents. I got 1 offer of representation, you know, from the one that was meant to be, and then she sent it to editors. So yeah, same. So I've never had that experience where you can like pitch something and like get an offer and then be like, oh, it's my job to write. Like that would be great. I would love to do that.
That's what happened with my second book. It was sold based on a proposal, but then you're like, tick tock, I have to turn it in, and I hate it. I built myself up so much in the proposal, but now I have to deliver, and they're gonna hate it, because when you're doing like I wrote this book about mediums, and so I'm like, it's a camp for my mediums and psychics. And then once they get past the fact that that's camp for mediums and psychics, then what? Are you still going to be interested in what I have to write about? So it all sucks.
Yeah, but you delivered. You delivered.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go on to audience questions because there's lots. So this is actually, it's kind of a repeat. The one I just asked, but someone had a more specific question of it. What are you reading now, and who do you read for inspiration?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So I try not to read thrillers while I'm writing a thriller, because I'm scared that like I'm going to subconsciously plagiarize. Like I will like seep into my brain. I'll be like, oh, that's a great idea that I just had, but not realize that it's because I just read it. So I like, while I was writing the novel, I read like An American Marriage, which, have you read that? It's so good. Oh my God. It's so good. I recommend that to everyone. I basically tried to read like literary fiction, I would say, or like just like I tried to read books that were way better than my writing to like elevate me, which like,
yes, totally,
you know. Totally. Right now, I'll plug one of my friends. There's an author named Robin Harding who, when she's Canadian, and when my memoir came out, she's like hugely popular in Canada. Her book that I'm reading right now is called The Swap, and it's like #1 in Canada, and she does well in the States too. But for whatever reason, my memoir was really popular in Canada as well. And so our 2 books 3 years ago were like the #1 like Indigo picks. And it was, her book was called The Party and mine was the memoir, and Indigo is a chain in Canada. And I remember like seeing that her book was like #1 Indigo, like for fiction, my book was #1 for nonfiction. And I was kind of like jealous of her. And then she, not knowing her at all, or just feeling like, oh, her book is better than mine. And then she just randomly was the first author to tag me on Instagram. It's like social media is like such a thing, but she tagged me on Instagram and just out of nowhere, was reading my memoir and just wrote this like long post about how amazing it was. And just, was like the kindest and most generous author. And we became friends. Anyway, long story short, I'm now reading her. She's one of those like prolific like authors that I was talking about before this call started, that I beat myself up a bit because I've had, I have had 2 books in like 3 years, and she has had 1 book like every single year. So she has had like, 3 or 4 books since that first book that came out at the same time as the memoir. But I'm reading her book right now called The Swap, which is about a marriage swap.
It's about what?
Yeah. It's like a marriage swap. Like they have like 2 couples like switch for a night and then chaos ensues. So.
Whoa. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, it's
awesome.
a thriller.
Okay, great. I wrote it down. Do you have another audience question, do you have any creative hobbies outside of writing that you find help your writing? Knitting, cooking, anything?
That's a great question too.
Also, can I add to that question?
Yeah.
Do you exercise, and when do you have time to exercise?
Oh, well, that was going to be part of my answer, because I feel like pandemic me is like different than other reality me, but this is the only reality like we have right now. So I'm just going to answer pandemic me answer, which is that like, I guess my hobbies, my hobby right now is that I picked up running, and I don't know that it's helped my writing, but I feel like it has, because it's like helped my mental health. I can't really think of anything specific other than reading that has helped my writing. Like I would encourage any writers to just read, like, and again, by authors that are better than you. Like I try to read, really, really good writing to like inspire me and hopefully make me better. But as far as like hobbies during the pandemic, like first of all, this is like maybe a whole nother topic, but I didn't do anything for like a couple months when it first started. And then I kind of started moving around a little bit and like getting dressed and like brushing my hair a little bit. But now I try to go running like maybe 3 or 4 times a week. And I never was a runner before, but I find that anything that I can get like me time, to use that expression, is just really helpful for my mental health, even if it's like 20 minutes a day. So I would say that that's what comes to mind as far as like what has helped me during this time period. And then outside of like this pandemic world, reading is really the number one hobby that I think has truly helped my writing.
That's so great. Amen to reading and to writing. And I'll add, I always read with a pen, and all my books are marked up. And one exercise I had when I was in grad school, we would write passages of books, like handwrite them out or type them on our computer. So our fingers would we'd like feel, like you said, what it felt like to shoot a gun, what it felt like to write a beautiful passage, even if it was someone else's. So you kind of feel the rhythm of it and the tones of it. And just, so you get this rhythm, and then you might write something similar using different words, but it has the same rhythm to it. And running it's meditation. You work out your problems, the dingleberries fall off, and like you can work out your writing as you run too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is from Sharon Hassel.
Oh, good. I'm glad, because I was just seeing the little pop up, so I wanted to answer.
Okay. I reached out to you when I was still writing. I have finished my first draft. I reached out to, it's 600 pages. Now I have to cut it down. It's been on my desk, and I'm ready to take it out in 2 weeks. Do you have any advice on how you cut parts out when you read your first draft? And following up from that, this is going to be a big question. How did you find, and this is to all panelists too, but how did you find your agent? Do you have to have a social platform? Like, how do you cut I'll kill your darlings. And is it important to have like, to be a, what is it called? A brand?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer the second question first because that one's way easier for me to answer. The first question is more complicated. So like I said before, I cold queried like literally 75 agents. And my agent who ended up offering me, and this is not to dissuade anyone, it's just, it was mind-boggling to me. She, told me that out of what the agents call the slush pile, which is the cold query pile, meaning you're not referred by anyone or they're not seeking you out.
And
She
often
had
it's
signed.
Interns often.
Yeah.
And some of those interns
Yeah, exactly.
are hangover, and it's not good.
Exactly. And so she told me that I think she'd been an agent at that point for like 7 years, and she had signed 2 people, and I was the third from like the slush pile, the cold querying. So, but that, honestly, they say insanity, the definition of insanity is like doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. But I feel like that is what I did with querying. I really just believed in my memoir, and I didn't really, I just didn't give up. It sounds kind of cliche, but I just believed in it, and I kept throwing it out there and seeing what would stick. And so that is how I got my agent. I did get a lot of responses from agents that said, because this is nonfiction, like, you need to have a platform, and like, we love your memoir, but get back to us when you have like 2 million Instagram followers, like that kind of thing. I'm exaggerating, but something like that. And when I got those responses, I felt like a weird thing in my stomach, like a twist in my stomach. And I was like, it almost, now looking back on it, that probably meant this is not the agent for you, because when I got my agent, she was treating it like fiction. She was like, holy cow, I read this in a day. I missed my subway stop. Like, she got it. Like, she understood the vision. She understood how it would be marketed. It wouldn't be like this nonfiction thing. It really would almost be marketed much more like a novel. And so, but I definitely got those responses like, we love it, but come back to us when you have a platform. And it's like, well, how do you get a platform? And I did actually work on, even after I signed with my agent, I did work on like putting out articles and just trying to get something going before we went to editors. So it is like, the business part of it is definitely a whole different animal, and it's a process. Gosh, you might be able to answer the first question better than me, because my problem has always been coming up short. Like, I'm always, not always, I've only written 2 books, but the memoir was 70,000 words. The novel did end up being like 90,000, but I definitely have the opposite problem as far as like word count goes, or getting rid of stuff. I find that I write really like intensely concentrated things. Like, I only write the most important things in my brain, and then I'm like, I'm done. And then I have to add to it. So I don't have as much of a problem as cutting things out, is that I have to add and add and add during the editing process. So I don't know if you might, like, it might resonate with you more, the like cut it, how you would cut.
The thing that resonates me with having to cut is when I'm doing shorter pieces. Like, if I pitch something, an essay or a short reported piece, they're like, 1,500 words, please. And then I write 2,500. Sometimes I end off and I'm very rude and have the editor cut the words for me. Can you guys hear me okay? My screen froze.
You're going in and out a little bit. I didn't know if it was me or if it was you, but like, you're frozen.
Hold on, my screen froze. Oh, okay, I'm here. You here?
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, okay. So that's my answer. No. So sometimes I'll just have, if I write a shorter piece, it might be like 100 or 200 words long, and the editor will cut it. No big deal. I've never had to cut like 600 words, or no, it's 600 pages. You'd probably want it to be like 350 pages, 400.
Mm-hmm.
I would say if you put it away for a while and you go back to it, be brutal and just cut out things that are meandering or just adding too much. and ask yourself, what is this necessary? And you read it as a reader rather than as the author. Another thing you can do to make it super helpful is just ask a trusted editor friend to read and brutally cut things out. Because there are books that have been 600 pages, but they're very hard to sell. It's very, very rare. I think like Carl Knos, I don't know how to say his name, Knosberg, or it's, I think it's called like My Life. And he has so many of the books. I haven't read them, but anyway, so you got to cut it. This is your last question, and we're gonna slowly depart, or instantly depart.
Like, how do we slowly depart this?
Yeah. Well, Sarah, see you later. Bye.
Okay, I'm gonna start rolling back for full of jokes tonight.
What is your favorite part about writing? What comes most easily to you, and what is the most difficult part?
That's such a great
What if you start with
multi-layered.
what's the easiest, what's the most difficult, and then what's your favorite part? And we'll end it at that.
Okay. The easiest part, I usually have 1 or 2 like big scenes in mind when I start something. And so for me, just getting those scenes down is how I can find my way into the rest of the book. So that I think would be the easiest part for me, is I can see, like I said, I kind of write like cinematically where I see scenes in my head. And so usually there's 1 or 2 scenes that I have in my head when I'm starting to write, and I get those down, and then I can kind of find my way into the rest of the book.
I wrote that down. That was a good one.
Oh, great. And then, the most difficult part for me is like the longevity part of it, just to keep going. Just to keep pounding away. It's daunting. And I would like to say that it gets easier, but I don't think it necessarily does. I can't like really speak to it because I'm only on book 2, but I have talked to authors like my friend Robin, who is on book like 9. And it is daunting to start at like 0 word count, and to know that you have to get to, like 90,000, 100,000, whatever. So that's a really vague answer. So I'm going to try to make it more specific and say that the most difficult part is, I would also say editing too, because I was talking about with my sister. She's also finished a book, but she's now editing, and it's brilliant, by the way. And she is now writing not because she's necessarily inspired, but because she knows that there's like elements missing, or like character depth missing, or like these scenes that kind of need to be there to like fill things out or like tie things together. And that is difficult. And once you're actually editing with an editor, to have, because I didn't realize, at least in my experience, the editor doesn't actually do anything. Well, no, they do like so much. They do so much, but they don't actually write anything. Like they don't, like my editor, this is sounding, what I'm trying to say is that, what I'm trying to say is that before I wrote a book, I thought you could basically write something and then the editor would be like, all right, I'm going to make this amazing. But that's not what happens. They just tell you, oh, you need more of this, this, and this, and let's delete this, this, and this, but then you go back and like do it. I thought that this like brilliant editor person would just come and like make everything sound so good. That doesn't happen. Yeah. And that's much better that way, right? Because it's all your own words. But that part is difficult for me, to have someone say, we need this scene. And it's like, I didn't really want to write that, but now that you're saying that, you're right. But I'm not like inspired to write it.
Yeah, totally. It's like the teacher saying, okay, go back and redo this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Like giving you a diagnosis or I used to think the same thing too. Like editors edit and you just give them your stuff and they take it and they're like, nope, this is what you figure it out.
Yeah.
Favorite part about writing? And that's amazing that your sister has written a book too.
Yeah, I know, and it's really it's
I
magnificent.
can't wait.
Favorite part about writing? My gut response. This is horrible. This is actually really horrible because my like gut response was like the part where you sell the book, and that's really not like an artistic thing to say at all. So, but I will just say that is, for me, that is the most exciting part when you sell the book. But the actual like artistic part of writing is when you get into, I like everyone who is a writer who's watching, I know you know what I'm talking about. When you're really into something, a scene, or multiple scenes, and all of a sudden, like literally like 3 hours have gone by, and you think it's been 5 minutes. That is so satisfying, and that does happen, not as often as I'd like it to, but that kind of, you know, when you're just in your element, and it's like time for me, it's very different when I'm writing. Like it can either drag or it can really like, it will be noon, I'll look up and it's 5 p.m. and I'm like, I thought it had been maybe half an hour. And so those kind of afternoons when that happens, that's my favorite part, is just knowing that I wrote something really that came from somewhere inspired. That's my favorite part.
Beautiful. And I think being done and selling a book is great, because then your story is read, and then it is a book, and we can get inside your head, your twisted head. I'm so everyone who's here today, you got to buy this book. It's so delicious and so good and so thrilling. And once I get my kids to bed, we're not allowed to give kids Benadryl, are we? Because I want them to go to sleep. So you can give your kids Benadryl and read this book. So
I don't do it because I have a good sleeper, but I have plenty of friends that do it.
Oh, so. No, I really don't. Everybody's gonna leave here and be like, Mira Ptacin's crazy. We wear them out physically, but I mean, you will want to put everything aside and read this book. I know print is selling copies. I'm wondering, they probably have autographed copies, or there can be somehow. I think what I did.
There can be, yeah.
There can be. Just buy the book. It's delicious. Is there going to be a movie?
I hope so. I would love there to be a movie. I would love there to be. There's no offer on the table, but fingers crossed, because I can totally see it being a movie. And there's some really, really badass like female characters that I would just love to see come to life. So
amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for giving us this book. Thank you so much for writing it. Thanks for letting us speak to you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I think maybe Print's gonna come on here and close us down. I'm not quite sure, but we'll awkwardly leave now. And thank you, everyone. Make sure you
exit.
Share us pictures of the book. And Jen, you're amazing. Love you very much.
Love you too. Thank you, Mira. Thank you so much. Thanks for doing this. And thank you, Print. Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming.